Everybody, welcome. Welcome to Beards and Science, our weekly show where I have a beard and you have science. No, tonight on the lab, we are going to talk about locus of control. You can see it up there right now. What is your locus of control? We'll get into this and we'll explore some research. There's a lot of research done on locus of control. You may have heard people talk about it before. You might have heard me talk about it. Even if you haven't heard me use the term locus of control, you've seen me and heard me and interacted with me working on this. Because this is something that I had to explore and found so helpful when I was working on recovery. And now that I work with people on their journeys of sticking with changes, it's come to be something that I've increasingly seen as important. I didn't realize how important it was myself when I was changing it. I just noticed it was a way that I practiced compulsion. So it was something I needed to change as part of recovering, right, from a bunch of diagnoses. But now I see it as such a huge support. Like working as a coach now with people, it is something I look for in that initial email. Like when somebody reaches out and sends me a message, particularly if they want to work together, something I'm looking for right away is where are they positioning power in their language? Where are they positioning control? This was a request to do this that came from one of you wonderful viewers and community members. So thank you. I want to give a huge shout out to all of the subscribers. Thank you so much for the support. And our moderators that have been helping out here on Twitch, but also on the Discord server. It's been so awesome. So, big thank you. Yes, Princess Kesva, hello. Big thank you to everybody that's been helping to grow this community so that when we're coming together around mental fitness and recovery from mental health challenges, mental illness, whatever you want to call them, that we really turn this into something that is much bigger than one person or one channel. That this is a community and a movement, because that's really how we share these skills and make it more accessible for other people to work on mental health skills, to work on leaving diagnoses behind, and really doing the things that we want to do in life, which is what this is all about. So I hope you find this locus of control discussion useful. Kyle, welcome. Some soul donuts to everybody out there. Oh, I didn't put spaces between my soul donuts. That's typical. Me just eating donuts without any spaces whatsoever. So thank you to everybody, and let's get into this. So the locus of control. I always found the term. On one hand sounds so cool, but it also sounds like you're talking about locusts. Locus of control, so it's from Latin. Locus refers to location. It's where you perceive and articulate control, and it's on a scale, and it's not necessarily going to be consistent throughout your life, but this is definitely an area where you've got to look beyond what you consider symptoms. Like I was saying, it's something I look at as soon as somebody sends me a message, because how we position power and control ends up being present in everything we're doing, but particularly it's present in our language. When we're writing messages online, when we're speaking to people, this is not only where we're articulating our perception of control, but we are teaching our brains in those moments where control is positioned. So there's a real danger there, as always, that we end up believing the stories that we're telling ourselves and that we're telling other people. That's very, very true when we're looking at locus of control. So it runs basically from internal to external, and you'll see us talk about that throughout the show this evening. We'll be talking about an internal locus of control and an external locus of control. And so an internal locus of control is where you see yourself as internally in control and in charge, right? You are the one that's going to handle things. So when we talk about mental health is about having any thought or feeling, that's very much an internal locus of control. You're going to have experiences and you are going to handle them. They do not control you. It's about how you interact with them. So that's very, very internal. And as you'll see in the research, generally, and not just generally, I really struggle to find any research that suggested at all that an internal locus of control was bad for mental health. But we do know that it can create issues, like you see in the other example there down below, because a person can really believe that they can handle everything. And so if somebody's, just kind of delusionally believing that they can take on an incredibly, incredibly challenging task because they're so convinced that they can control everything in the world, they're going to struggle a lot. And so that's very much an excessive internal locus of control, right? So it can become problematic. We can end up blaming ourselves for things, like maybe something terrible happened that we did not control, but now we blame ourselves, even though anybody else could see that, well, that was just the result of things happening around us. It wasn't our fault. So in internal control, although we'll talk about it as being like generally this great thing this evening, it can be problematic as well. Right? If somebody has kind of delusions of grandeur, they're gonna maybe be struggling with a serious mental illness, but they might be ending up more on the internal side of things. External locus of control, we leave things up to chance. It's all up to the universe. We are played. When you hear me talk about being puppeted around by thoughts and feelings, that's an external locus of control, right? The anxiety prevents me from going. The anxiety keeps me from doing things. The thoughts, the paranoia, the guilt, when we're attributing control to them, that's an external locus of control, right? My illness made me do it. My illness keeps me from doing it. Right? Very, very external. There's a global conspiracy. Also, a lot of what we see right now, when we're looking at conspiracy theories and stuff like that, that's also part of this external locus of control. Right? Everything is being controlled by a bunch of other powerful people. And these three, so often you'll see it termed as internal and external control, but something some researchers will look at is whether a person believes the locus of control is chance external. So it's more just that they believe that it's like kind of all luck and chance and things like that, or that they believe in very powerful people. Right? So I am kind of controlled by and a victim of very powerful people who manipulate me or manipulate the world. You'll see as we get into the research, it tends to suggest that being on the external side of things can get really problematic. Let's roll on over there. And so there's tons of studies on this. I was just going through a bunch of different studies to really show the breadth. Like when we talk about locus of control, this touches essentially every mental illness diagnosis you can think of. But there's also extensive research on how it impacts things like business, like how well somebody does in business, how somebody does in school. But even as you'll see in one of the studies here, it looks at stroke patients. It's also very impactful for physical injuries. Like your locus of control affects how you handle so many different experiences in life. So some of the studies, and we've talked a lot before about trauma and PTSD on here. I found this really interesting because we've talked about predictors and particularly social support. So two studies that I pulled here. So the first one, a study on kids that had experienced an earthquake in China. They found that the locus of control, so if the kids had a greater external locus of control, that was the most predictive factor of whether they were struggling with PTSD at 3 months after the earthquake. And 17 months, it was the second highest predictor. Oh, and I see World PCS question, where do you recommend people being on the scale? We'll get into that, I think, as we go on. it's not that there's like I should be in a place or something like that, because then we can get into all sorts of compulsions trying to get it right. But moving more internally. And so I'll give a shout out to what we're going to do here. We'll run through the research, and then I've prepared a bunch of common statements where we get caught up in an external locus of control, and then we'll look at how to shift them to an internal locus of control. And at the very end, I will actually give everybody a quick little exercise that really helped me just start to shift it. So it's not that I have to see myself as being anywhere particularly on the scale. It's just looking at how can we help ourselves move to a more internal focus where it's useful to us. Think about trauma. So think about like an earthquake. We don't control earthquakes. If somebody's engaging in lots of magical thinking where they believe they can control earthquakes, or they believe their thoughts, like if they have a thought of something bad happening to loved ones and then an earthquake happens, that they controlled it, that's problematic too. So it's not as simple as saying, hey, everybody should have an internal locus of control, because when we're looking at delusions and things like that, you can just as easily have a very internal locus of control, actually excessively so. And that can get wrapped up in all sorts of mental illness compulsions as well. So so keep that in mind. This question of like, where do we want to be on the scale? Because we'll keep coming back to that, because it's not as simple as just saying go internal. It's about starting to understand what's actually really useful, because often we want to see external forces. External forces so often put a lot of pressure on people, can be very oppressive, and then people end up blaming themselves. We even see that in the mental health care system a lot, right? Where somebody, right? You've often probably heard me joke about this before, that the mental health care system is like if somebody came in with a broken nose, and in the ER they said, "Oh, you have a bleeding face disorder," right? We would recognize that broken nose probably came from somewhere, right? But so often we don't do that with mental health, right? We blame basically people. If someone's experienced trauma and they're having a very natural reaction to it, it's like we blame them. Oh, you've got the disorder. So we also don't want to do that. So it's really subtle and interesting here. So yeah, that's why this is such a great topic. And Toad Sage, thank you so much for the subscription. I very much appreciate the support. Donuts to you. Welcome. So also speaking of PTSD, to get into another one of these studies here, research on university students in Jamaica found a correlation between increased PTSD and depression and an external locus of control. And I see you found the donut. What was interesting about that, and they called it out particularly in the study, was what we had talked about many times before, is that generally the biggest predictor of whether you develop PTSD or not is your perception of social support. They found in that study that was not as important as locus of control. A locus of control was more important. So how you perceive that. But we'll talk about a study later on where they found that locus of control was directly linked to how many social connections you had. So all of these things start to become very, very connected. Stroke patients. This study I found really interesting. So it wasn't a huge effect, but they found that measuring where people perceived their locus of control, so particularly after they'd had a stroke, is it now about like, okay, I'm gonna get it together, I'm gonna do physiotherapy, I am going to get back functioning. So internal locus of control. Or did they see it as like, oh no, I've had a stroke and now it's going to prevent me from doing all these things I want to do? External locus of control, right? The stroke is controlling me. They found that measuring locus of control was more predictive of how well people did in rehabilitation in terms of getting back functioning than the location of the stroke in the brain. Not a huge effect, but even the fact that so that locus of control would be more important than the location, but also that it would be relevant at all. right? Because you would think this kind of stuff would be totally it's just about biology. I've had some, blood vessels burst in the brain, and now, there's going to be this physical problem. But it really determines, right, how you engage with something like physiotherapy and rehab, right? Because just like we see in mental health therapy, recovery, and things like that, is it about you doing a thing? Or is this just like, okay, this thing has happened, somebody fix it? Similarly, we see this across the board with mental illness diagnoses too. So there's a bunch of studies on schizophrenia and locus of control. So one of them, a 15-year study, found that an external locus of control was linked to decreased recovery amongst patients. So another study where the internal locus of control was linked to a greater likelihood of that person who had had an experience of psychosis getting back into work. Across the board, what I'll do as well, I will post, so I don't think I can post the links to the studies on Twitch, but on YouTube, I'm going to post this later on YouTube. So on YouTube, we'll put the links to all of those studies so you can check them out in the description down below. I see D-Dad in the chat there. Yeah, you see the government is controlling your hiccups. That's external locus of control, right? If we believe somebody or something else happened, we're like, oh, I'm having hiccups because it was a stressful day, right? So the day controls my hiccups. Let's look, and even like speaking of trauma, because this comes up a lot with traumatic events. Locus of control is something that's looked at a lot in research on trauma. Look at these two examples. So why is locus of control so important to recovery from trauma? But you'll notice I also picked out an example that maybe we don't necessarily think of as PTSD, but comes up a lot around depersonalization and derealization, and often will link it to a specific event. We'll say, I got high, I did these drugs, or this event happened, and it caused the depersonalization and derealization. The challenge with that, and that we see in research shows this challenge comes up with PTSD as well. If we're like, oh, because of that traumatic event, I now have anxiety. The issue, and the reason that question there is at the bottom, where and when do you change these? Is because if it's the event that caused the problem, we have to time travel to go back and fix the problem. And time travel is still really difficult. It's exhausting. Right? A lot of you know this because you try to time travel in your head all the time, to go back and check false memories and check if you did something bad in the past. That's like time travel, right? It's exhausting. It's more useful. You see the example on the right there. Even if we trace them back to a particular event, the place to work on them is in the present by bringing it into that internal locus of control, right? I experience depersonalization and derealization symptoms because of checking and controlling compulsions I do around physical sensations and intrusive thoughts. Maybe I did start doing those at a traumatic event in the past. Right? That traumatic event happened. I tried to handle it by falling back on some old habits that I'd used before to control uncertainty and pain and difficult experiences. And they just didn't scale to the size of the trauma. And so I've kept up those habits to control and cope with and manage this. But I'm doing that in the present. The great thing about that is that in the present we can make changes. I cannot go back and solve or fix or resolve or find closure or whatever with the traumatic event in the past. As long as I see that traumatic event in the past as the problem, we're stuck in that external locus of control, right? This thing that requires time travel to fix is controlling me. So we shift it to right now. It does not mean that we're obliterating the trauma. It does not mean that we are denying the trauma. It happened. It was painful. But right now, I am doing something to that pain here in the present. And that is me. That is me doing that. And the great thing about that is that now I can change it. And so this is the huge advantage of moving internal. Is as long as it's external, you often can't do anything about it. The moment it's internal, we can change it. That's why this is so important. That's why, and so often it comes up when say I'll get a message from somebody asking about coaching, stuff like that, or just any kind of question somebody sends me. Maybe some of you have had this before, where you send a question about, because of this event in the past, it's keeping me from doing this. Whatever it is, it's keeping me from starting my own business. And I'll ask you something like, how is it keeping you from doing that? Does it have arms? Does it hold you? Does it have tentacles? Does it have feet? Does it have claws? Does it have teeth? We so often put power into these events and experiences, feelings, intrusive thoughts, etc., through our language. It is so useful to start to pull that back. That's why this is important. Yeah, I see a bunch of you mentioning in the chat. Yeah, this was something I didn't notice. Like when I struggled with my mental health, this just was the way I perceived the world. There were things I couldn't do because of feelings. There were things I had to do because of urges, etc. Like this was just, that was how, something popped up, I reacted to it. That was how I existed. And it's really, really difficult to change anything as long as there's that external locus of control. I am going to show you a funny study of like a bit of one more study here, and then we'll get into like how do we start to change this stuff. So now I have to put up this disclaimer here. If I see this as a meme, and you'll understand why in a second, and you will know that this is one of my pet peeves, because the image you're about to see is like when people put up like brain scans, and they're like, oh look, this brain scan shows that like this mental illness is different than a normal person, and those have been so thoroughly debunked. A lot of the times when you see them online, they're fake. This is kind of similar. But this was a study done specifically to test how people shift, maybe shift or interact with an external locus of control around mental illness diagnoses, particularly depression. But this is something there's a lot of research on, because we maybe assume that telling people, for example, they have that there's a biological reason for their mental illness, that there's some kind of brain issue going on, some kind of neurodegenerative issue or something like that. There was an assumption in like anti-stigma campaigns that would be useful. We're going to tell people that there's something wrong with these people's brains, and that's going to make them be more compassionate and empathetic. But the opposite has turned out to be true. It comes up a lot. There's a whole bunch of studies on this, because what we find is then people see that other person as having something wrong with them, and something wrong with them that they do not control. And so this study we're going to look at here quickly is an example of that. And what they were looking at here was what happens if we bring in a bunch of people who have experienced depression in the past or are experiencing depression right now. And what's going to happen if we tell them, we actually do a test on them, a fake test, and then we tell them that they have low serotonin, or we tell them that their serotonin is normal. And so this image you see up here is the actual test results that they would show the people in the study. I have pasted fake warning labels all over it so nobody reuses it. It's what they did in the study. So the researchers brought in two groups of people again. So both groups of people had either experienced depression or were having an experience of depression. And they were told that this study would show them if their depression was the result of a chemical imbalance. And they did a swab. They did like a swab inside their cheek, and then they put it in a thing, very kind of scientific looking. They had somebody come in a lab coat, right, super scientific looking, and then they leave and they go and do the test. And also this person is in like a doctor's office kind of place, so it seemed like this is legit, we're doing science. And then they come back and they would present them with this, which you see here. I'll zoom in. Neurotransmitter level relative to expected level, right? And keep in mind, all of this is fake. We have no clue what's a normal level for any neurotransmitter. There is no test that we can do to you come in and we're going to measure your neurotransmitters and tell you if you're deficient in some or not. This is all fake. But the researchers did this because there's such a prevailing myth in society that mental illnesses are caused by chemical imbalances. So they wanted to see what happens if we tell people either, their depression was look. And so you can see it here. That's why I wanted to zoom in, because here's the serotonin, right? So many people believe I'm low on serotonin. We even talk about things like this. It's become part of our lexicon. Totally fake. So they either showed them this, that their serotonin was very low, or they showed them, there's another one where they showed their serotonin was up here. So all the people had experiences with depression, and so they were just telling them, one group, actually your serotonin is totally normal. And then the other group, they were like, whoa, your serotonin is so much lower. Look how much lower it is than all your other neurotransmitters. And then what they wanted to measure then, what they were looking at was locus of control. So if you tell somebody something like this, you give somebody a message, like your mental illness is a result of this thing that you cannot control. We don't know how to control that. How would they were looking at what would your perception of yourself be? What would your perception of the prognosis be? Could I get better? And how would you perceive treatments? And so kind of probably obviously and to be expected, if they told people that they had low serotonin, they were more likely to have a pessimistic view of their prognosis, so that they were unlikely to get better. And they also then, of course, were much more skeptical of psychotherapy. Even though, of course, we know psychotherapy and meds, they tend to go well together. They have similar levels of effectiveness. It's really impactful to, whether we're giving people a message about, can you do stuff to change this, or is this out of your control? And Louie, you asked, is that myth still taught to psych students? Yes, and I see there, we've got someone chimed in, yes, I was taught that in school. I was taught to question everything in psych, but it was still very much part of the curriculum. Yeah, it's still, and we know, so in anti-stigma campaigns, we know actually that promoting a purely biological view actually increases people's fear of people with mental illness. And you can see why, right? Because locus of control isn't just a personal thing. If we believe that somebody else is controlled externally, so they are not in control of their actions, of course, we're going to be more afraid of them, right? Not less. Even with clinicians, there was, and so this is, maybe when you're talking about school, this was an interesting study. I'll throw this in the YouTube channel as well. So this was a study on clinicians and whether or not they were more empathetic. And so this was just a study on clinician empathy. And if the clinician believed, so they were basically just looking at do you believe a mental illness is more biological, that these people have biological problems with them. And the more likely a clinician is to believe that biological explanation, the less empathetic they are. which I think some people thought like that it would increase empathy. But then it's like, oh, because like, why would they care about what's going on in your life? Why would they care about what's happening around you? Because, oh, it's just a problem, right? It's like that person who comes in to the emergency room with the broken nose. Right? We understand with something like that physically, or like a gunshot wound. We understand like that gunshot wound came from somewhere. But if we believe that gunshot wound is like, you just have a biological problem. You just sprout gunshot wounds. We're not going to care where they got the gunshot wound. We're not going to care if they're safe. And so yeah, it's really interesting because I think a lot of people assumed that biological explanations for mental illness would decrease stigma, increase empathy, and things like that. But we see in the research that's not the case, and that applies to ourselves as well. We are like, if you don't believe that recovery is possible, how could you work on recovery? If you're like, oh, this is just a thing, this is just a problem in my brain, like, how do I fix my brain? We're back into what we looked at with trauma, right? Like, I don't know how to time travel and I can't do brain surgery, so what do I do? But if we shift that to what we're doing in this moment, and see, we still, just like we don't have to deny the trauma, we also don't have to deny there could totally be something going on in the brain. Absolutely. It totally could be there. But that internal locus of control is saying, okay, that is how my brain operates. My brain loves to throw up paranoid delusions. Great. My brain loves to throw up voices. It loves to throw up violent images. Okay, but what am I going to do in this moment to notice those experiences and do things I value? It's that internal locus of control is not about ignoring the symptoms. It's about saying, yeah, the symptoms are there, and yeah, maybe there is something wacky about my brain. But what am I gonna do? I can handle this. It's the same approach that's really useful to take with our bodies and physical fitness. Like, there's always going to be lots of people who'll be like, oh, I don't have the genes for running, or I don't have the genes for swimming, I don't have the genes for weightlifting, I'm a hard gainer, etc., etc. But you can also just say, okay, well, here's how my body functions. What am I going to do to reach my goals? And it probably means I'm going to have to make some changes, and I'm going to have to do some unusual things that maybe other people don't do. But I'm going to do it. And so with all of this, it's not about denying anything. It's actually about working with what we've got. And so let's now get into, how do we start to change this up? How do we start to mix it up? So I threw up a bunch of examples, and we'll just go through and look at what's it like to switch from that external locus of control to one that's more internal. First one, maybe really common. We might, this often starts first thing in the morning. Wake up, checking immediately, are the thoughts there? And then like some terrible intrusive thought pops up and we're like, oh, that intrusive thought has ruined my day. Right, so thoughts ruin my day. Does anyone want to take a stab at it? Stab. The pun was intentional. Maybe we can get to violent, intrusive thoughts about stabbing. So thoughts ruin my day. That's external, right? Because the thoughts somehow have hands and flamethrowers and they're burning up my day. So I put the power into the thoughts. Anybody there in the chat, what would it look like to switch that to internal locus of control? Super simple here. I want to have any thought. Okay? I want to learn how to have thoughts. Yeah, Itsuki, you see there? I'm having thoughts now. Yeah, now I'm going to go about my day. Curiosity is a really great support with switching to that internal locus of control. Right? Something is going to happen. I may not like it. It may suck, right? It's not about denying it. Those might be horrible intrusive thoughts. They might be disgusting. They might be terrible, etc. But I can be curious about what it's like to go and make a delicious breakfast. I can make it for myself. I can make it for my family. while having horrible, disgusting, intrusive thoughts in my pocket. I want to know what that's like. I want to understand that experience. I want to understand why it's difficult to make space for them. I want to understand the compulsions I engage in, the judgments I engage in around those thoughts. Yeah, woohoo, it's a new thought. And a lot of the times it is like the brain throws up a new thought and we're like, whoa, that's new, that's different. Does this mean something? What do I do? I've never seen this thought before. No, it's like, oh, this is a new thought. That's so cool. I get to experience a new thought. I can see my brain trying to suck me in. Right? My brain's trying to come up with new stuff because I've got my brain on the run because I'm cutting out compulsions. Let's do it. The next one, and you'll see here, I've gone every other one exploring something that's more part of our everyday lives. Because it's so important to see that locus of control is something that is there every time we're interacting with something, every time we're talking to somebody. So this is where I really noticed that it was a compulsion, but that I saw it as normal. I never wanted to take responsibility for anything. And I was always, of course, really afraid. I had all sorts of social anxieties. I was really afraid of being disliked for anything. So I never wanted to admit to liking anything. I never wanted to refuse anybody anything. So I always relied on the external locus of control to excuse me from everything. Right? Oh, I was too busy because school sucks or work sucks. Work and school, they take up all of my time. Or even if somebody asked me to go and do something and I already had something else going on, I would say, something like, I can't because there's a dinner thing I have to go to. Now you might think that's true. Right there, I'm already scheduled in. Maybe it's like with friends, I might really want to go to it. But why is this an external locus of control? And it's these kind of seemingly normal ways of structuring and expressing ourselves where we really build up this belief in the external locus of control. This is such useful stuff to change. I can't because there's a dinner thing I have to go to. Yeah, so first up, the I can't. I absolutely can. I absolutely can, if I want to, cancel the thing I already have planned and choose to go to whatever this friend is asking me to do. That's 100% something I can do. And yes, maybe I'm afraid to cancel the dinner thing because I'm afraid people will say things about me and think things and they'll be upset, etc. Right? This also goes for when people are setting boundaries around work stuff. Right? Say somebody asked you to do a project for them. They're like, hey, can you really help me with this? And you want to set, you're like overworked. But rather than say, no, I don't want to do that right now because I want to give my energy to this, you say, oh, I can't because of this reason and that reason and that reason. Right? So this other thing has controlled me. It's preventing me from doing this thing. I would love to, but I can't. So I set, one of the things I worked on in this kind of adventure of recovery, particularly when I was tackling normal compulsions, was that I had to start every time I had a scheduling conflict, I had to say what I wanted to do. I want to go to this dinner thing tomorrow night. To articulate what I want. I'm not controlled, I'm not incapable of doing things, I'm not confined by something in my schedule. I'm actually going to tell people what I want to do. It is so... yeah. It is so freaky at first, but it's so powerful to just start to look. Every time where you would see yourself as controlled, like, oh, I can't do that because of this. What would it be like to start saying, I want this thing over here? To just articulate the thing you want versus the thing you can't do. This is like, and this one, again, this is in this area where we wouldn't see it as clinical, but I would say this is how so many of these things start. It's these types of things where the brain learns, where the brain's saying, oh, okay, you're not in control of these things. What you want doesn't matter. It's what other people want. Other people control you. Exactly. I see someone saying there, yeah. M prom queen, so small but powerful. These kinds of things, just articulating I want instead of I can't. What about this one? The mental illness makes me push people away. There's a common rate, maybe we get a fear, oh no, if I get too close, it's gonna get ruined. What if they find out about horrible things I worry I've done in the past? What if my false memories are true? What if I lose my mind? Maybe we get feelings of abandonment. So our go-to approach when we feel like we're gonna get abandoned and hurt is to hurt the other person first. All sorts of compulsions come up with this. The mental illness makes me push people away. What's an internal locus of control here? Yeah, so many of us. We get, even like when we get good feelings, saying in the chat there, being guilty of this, but it's so common, even with good feelings, where we're like, wow, I'm really falling in love with this person. And then we're like, whoa, what does this feeling mean? And we push people away. Yeah, so 31 candles, I value relationships. So I'm gonna have relationships while having any thoughts and feelings, right? Like stepping into it. Yeah, building, toad sage, like you said there, can you choose to do the actions to build these kinds of relationships you want with people? Gold pill, yeah, I would like to work on having friends and relationships while having any thought. Right, so really, really pushing into like the difficulty here. Right, so many great ones there. So I'll kind of capture this, like, I want to have the feels as I build a relationship. Right, stepping into it, risking it. Seeing like, okay, no, like I notice this feeling right now. I notice this urge to step away or avoid or control, but actually I'm gonna step into it. Right? And again, you see that word want. Right? I want to have this. And yes, it could be difficult. Yes, it could be scary. Yes, I'm gonna feel vulnerable. I'm gonna feel like I can't handle it. I'm gonna feel like I'll mess it up. I want to feel that. I want to try that and explore that. Yeah, Waldman, you said that. I want to be with the people I love and value. So I'm going to hold on to them. Because the only reason, and it's great you brought that up, because so often with this stuff, we get caught up doing the thing that's the exact opposite of what we actually want. Because the only reason we're afraid of being abandoned or being rejected is because we really care about people. And so then we end up doing the very thing that we're most afraid of. So now we start to step into that. Yeah, and Sean, exactly like you said, it's like a new video game level. Like approaching it like that level, like, oh, I want to step into this challenge. And just knowing, like, yeah, it's going to be really difficult. I'm going to fall into the lava. I'm going to get eaten by a monster. And then I'll do it again. Like, I'll learn from that. That, like, curiosity and desire to try. And like you're making fun of the brain. Well, exactly. Make the brain squirm. That really helped me a lot. Now let's look at like another kind of everyday life example. Say you were starting a business and the customers, they just weren't showing up. You had to close your business. And then you articulate this, oh, like the customers weren't ready for my business. How would you turn that into an internal locus of control? So right now we got somebody here who's blaming the failure of the business on the customers not being ready. I'm sure the customers are very embarrassed about how unready they were, although they probably have no idea they were not ready. I'm going to understand the customer better. Here's how I can do that, right? And bringing it back to action, right? So seeing, again, internal isn't about denying what happened. It's actually, the great thing about an internal locus of control is that we can be really honest about what happened. Because actually, see here, the external locus of control is often trying to deny reality by shoving things off to this external kind of responsibility. When we say, no, okay, like, I can do something about this. So what did not work well here? It's like the video game example we were just talking about. When we fall in the lava, we don't blame the lava. Like the lava's just there. And maybe we didn't see it, whatever. Like, okay, this time on the video game level, how do I jump over the lava? Okay, because maybe I have to jump here, jump there. I thought I could just jump over here, but then I fell in the lava. So actually I've got to jump here, jump here, jump here. Oh, and look, now like I'm past the lava and I can move on to the next challenge. Yeah, Sean, like you're saying there, I want to take this challenge and let me look at my business and see how I can improve it. So bringing that curiosity again. Curiosity to how we're doing things, and always like lining it up with values. When we talk about values, that's a concept that comes from the business world. Right? Identifying what we value and then putting our time and energy towards it. Often we get our values from our customers. So actually, yeah, what do my customers care about? Okay, my customers care about donuts. Okay, I do not have enough donuts in my business, so I will have more donuts in my business. That is now what I value. I value making fresh donuts because that's what my customers care about. Donuts. Exactly. Always borrow donuts. I hope, is that what you meant? It's kid. Borrow donuts. Okay. This, I have like a bonus trick here. We'll block out the other side of it right now. Donuts. So many donuts. This is a bonus trick that can be helpful sometimes, because sometimes we just aren't ready. Oh, I was going to put 3 donuts up. There we go. Sometimes we're like really struggling with compulsions. Maybe we're doing like tons and tons of compulsions all week. Maybe there's all sorts of stuff happening around us. You know, like there could be life disasters happening, a pandemic. Maybe our business just imploded. A family member is sick in the hospital, so like we're running to take care of them. All sorts of different things. So sometimes, and so this is a bonus trick. So yes, ideally, 31 candles. You're right on there. I can work while having any thought or feeling. But sometimes people say, look, I just can't, like I'm wrecked. So sometimes we'll bring in this bonus trick. And actually, and this may sound wild at first, I'm gonna shove this over here. We may choose to do the compulsion. But something that I found really helpful was me choosing to do the compulsion. So again, having that internal locus of control. So not seeing it as like, oh, things are so terrible and there's the guilt and like, it's making me not work. But to be honest and say that, look, if I can't work right now, it is way more useful to me for me to choose not to work and see it as entirely my choice than to see it as the responsibility of guilt, something that was caused by some random feeling in my head, or intrusive thoughts, stress, whatever. Because if I'm the one choosing to do the compulsion, I can change that later. But if it's this random feeling is controlling me and manipulating me, or like these random things in the environment are controlling and manipulating me, I can't do anything about them. So sometimes this can, and again, you can't like do it all the time and be like, oh, well, today I'm just going to choose compulsions. I'm in control. That won't work out so well either. But this is one that I found it really helpful. I've seen it helpful with people I've worked with. Sometimes it just helps to put you back in control of it. So you might even change the time when you do it. Like with some compulsions, it might just be about saying, whoa, okay, I know that if I just leave this, I'm just going to get to the point where I'm just going to fail. There's so much going on. And then I'm going to judge the failure. I'm going to hate on myself. I'm going to have this idea again about recovery, like, oh, I can't do it because my brain's different and all of that kind of stuff. So actually, I'm just going to choose to do the compulsion right now. And I chose to do it, and it was on my terms, and I didn't do it as a reaction to my brain. Yeah. And so I might choose to avoid some work and go and do something else that's valuable to me so that tomorrow it's easier for me to do the things I want to do. And it might actually be about addressing the things that are creating the stress. So I might say, because like something went on and so I spent a lot of time ruminating, and when I ruminate, I think about terrible things that could have happened in the past, and then I feel guilty, and then I can't work. So what I might actually do here is say, I'm choosing not to work, but to instead prepare tomorrow's work. So I'm not sitting around ruminating. Okay, so what I often say with this, the trick here is to make tomorrow easy. So you identify something that sets you up for compulsions today. Because often it's just like something wasn't prepared, or we had some expectation that wasn't reasonable. We're like, oh, I'll do all my work like right away. And then like there were all these things not ready, and then we were just sitting there like ruminating or waiting on something. And then the brain was like, wow, you have nothing to do. Here, obsess about this false memory. You can control that. And then we started doing that, and then we were miserable. So what am I going to do today? I'm going to choose not to do the work I wanted to do. That's on me. I'm choosing that, and I'm choosing to do something that's going to make tomorrow easier so that I do not end up in the same situation again. So a little bit of a trick there. Sometimes say like, look, this is a struggle. How do I bring control back into it? Yes, and Joe is right on there. So is it good to imagine we can control things to trick the brain, even though that is probably delusional in many cases? So I would watch out for it. Watch out for, like, don't let it go delusional though. I'd say like make it very tangible. So here, like, I'm choosing not to work, right? So even though I may recognize that's a compulsion, I'm choosing not to do it, right? So it's not delusional. This is a thing I can choose, and I'm going to choose to do something very practical that's going to make it easier to not do the compulsions tomorrow. If we get believing, right, that like we can control all sorts of things we don't control, then it depends. You'd have to like see. Maybe if you have a specific example though, we could explore that. Because what I was thinking, what we could do right now, I've got a bunch more space here. We could take some other examples, if anybody has one. If you have any other examples of, and it doesn't, you don't have to have figured out how it's the external locus of control. If you just throw out an example, we can come up with a kind of a statement that would capture that. So it could be anything, because this is across, like you were saying there, this is across all mental illness diagnoses. This is in every aspect of life, from business to relationships. Yeah, that's what the customers weren't ready for my business. There was a study on locus of control. They'd done it in China with a lot of businesses. Like it was a lot of, I don't know if it was like kind of like the Chinese version of the S&P 500, but it was a lot of business leaders. And they did a study on locus of like the leaders' perceptions of locus of control. And what they found was that if their locus of control was more internal, they were more likely to have a larger social network. And this goes back, remember at the very beginning we were talking about like external locus of control is also like very chance oriented, but also very powerful people oriented. So if you believe, well, my business is kind of just up to chance, it'll work out because like people will find it. And you're probably not going to do as much work to like connect with lots of people. Or, particularly relevant in the Chinese market, if you believe it's just up to like, oh, I know some powerful people, right? Like I know some powerful officials, right? That belief, again, in this case, a positive belief that there's some powerful people who just control things, you're not going to reach out to as many people to really build that network. And so, yeah, recognizing that you're in charge of your business actually encourage people to connect more with people, which I think is the message here, that an internal locus of control can actually, it's not about like, I'm on my own and I can do everything. It's about recognizing, oh yeah, like this is about me. So what's the useful way to do the thing I want to do? Well, yeah, it's about me making connections, because nobody else is just gonna let my business magically do well. So yeah, internal locus of control. You're not solo. You're not doing this on your own. Exactly, 31 candles, like you just said there. Super common external locus of control. Comment you hear right now: the job market is terrible for my generation, so I'm never gonna have a career I like. Yeah. So how do we bring that back to us? Let's put that up there. The job market is terrible. The job market is terrible for my generation, so I'm never going to have a career I like. Okay, internal locus of control. How are we going to handle this? Yeah, and Sean, I see you bringing it up there. This is something we worry about all sorts of different times in life. You said there, this is a worry of mine. I'm past a certain age and it's too hard to make friends at this age. Oh yeah, you were talking about the social connects, but there you go. Oh, it's too hard to make friends at this age. So, right, same as the like, oh, it's my generation, it's my age that makes this difficult. Whoa, and Wallerman, you came up with a great one there. I see that coming up a lot. I can't live alone because the intrusive thoughts will get worse. That one comes up a lot. People being afraid of being alone because the intrusive thoughts will get worse, or they're afraid they'll lose control, there's nobody around, terrible things will happen, and so they end up like always needing to do things when others are around. So either they can feel like they're safe, or it's kind of like others' responsibility. Joystick Jago. So you brought up a great one. We'll throw this up here because maybe this will be our last one on relationships. And it's really neat because we don't control the other person, and we often with a relationship want to know like what's going to happen in the future. I'm scared of not knowing if we'll be together in the future. And you see, everybody see why that's like an external locus of control, because implicit in it is that like it's not about me. It's kind of like that I'm gonna leave it up to the universe one, but here being afraid that, oh no, like this is just up to the universe. Like I have no agency in what's going to happen here. Joe football. So actually, Joe, and so I don't know if you did. So this is where we get at the potentially delusional bit. How do you know that raw force of personality will secure the job you want? This is where like it gets interesting. If you had to put it into an action, this is like maybe the key way to think of internal locus of control. That it helps so much to bring it back to an action I'm going to do. And you could even think about, like, if you recognize, for example, like you have a really great personality and people really connect with your personality. What action can you do to get more people connecting with your personality? You would probably, and so this is a great thing, like recognizing our strengths. So we say, look, I get along really well with people. What I want to look at, though, is a really practical action I can do. So that's going to be something like every week I'm going to meet. Now, it might be virtual. Every week I'm going to meet one new person at a company I might want to work for. Because we see that, okay, if I'm meeting people, like that's the action that's going to put me in front of people where I can interact with people and connect with them around my strength, which is my personality and connecting with people. And so we bring it back to, okay, what's the thing that I can do so that I'm out there playing to my strengths? And I see some people bringing up in the chat, yeah, some of this may be figuring out other skills. It could be things like saying, okay, like maybe the career I wanted doesn't exist anymore. A lot of people are recognizing now that maybe some careers or roles or businesses, entire businesses and industries that they hope to get into no longer exist. So it's about taking that step back and not saying like, oh, the pandemic took away my goals, now I have no goals. Right? The pandemic did not like come and take away your goals. It did not take away anything. It does not have, right? It does not have hands and claws and tentacles. We just see, okay, that thing, right? That thing that I was about to jump onto. It's like the video game again. There's a platform that you were about to jump onto across the lava. The platform is no longer there. So what platform are you going to jump to instead? And so, yeah, we've got to shift and adjust. It's another great way to bring control back to us. We choose something different and we build around that. Yeah, Toad Sage. So right now, like the theater industry, just devastated, right? And then how many people working in theater, like every actor I knew who was working in theater also worked like waiting tables in restaurants and bars. Just this huge double whammy where that career that you've always wanted to pursue that maybe you knew, okay, I know like if I want to pursue this, I'm going to be working like other side jobs, but then all of a sudden all of the side jobs also got obliterated. So, like I said there, they've all learned new skills and figure out how to apply those skills in new fields because also they have these amazing skills of performance that are so relevant in so many other places. I can't live alone because the intrusive thoughts will get worse. I can't live alone because the intrusive thoughts will get worse. First of all, we probably, like we want to go and live alone, right? So we might do can too. Living alone because I want to handle any thought. Ones like this, like exploring this kind of stuff, is also really useful for how we start to explore like unhelpful beliefs and compulsions we're engaging in, like judgments and stuff like that. Because you really look at this, you say, okay, like, if the only reason I'm afraid of living alone is because thoughts are going to come up. Well, how am I interacting with those thoughts in ways that are not helpful? What beliefs do I have about thoughts? Because if I'm like, oh, I'm alone and now I'm having a bad thought, so now I have to do something. Right, implicit in that again is that external locus of control, that if I have the bad thoughts, they're going to control my actions. Right, well, that belief there is not very useful to me. And then what we start to look at is how that external locus of control comes up throughout our lives. Right? It's in that simple thought that seems normal of like, oh, did I get an email? Maybe I should check my email. Did I get a Tinder message? Maybe I should just open up Tinder and check. It's the same thing. Like we're playing that puppet role in those moments, right? The brain's throwing up a thought and we react to it. And that's the exact same pattern that's there at work when we're reacting to intrusive thoughts, and then it's why we're afraid of intrusive thoughts. Because we've been teaching the brain throughout the day that when it throws up a thought, I'm going to react to it, and I'll do whatever you want, brain. And then that just fuels that cycle, and things get worse and worse. And so really, really useful to look at not just the intrusive thoughts, but how am I reacting to thoughts throughout my life? And how do I start to show my brain that control and choice lies with me? So it can throw up any thought. It can even throw up a thought like, hey, we should get donuts, right? A thought that's like, I'm like, that's a great idea. We should totally do that. But I want to show my brain that I'm in charge here, right? So I proactively decide when we'll eat donuts and make sure we're eating lots of donuts. So when the brain throws up, hey, we should get donuts, I'm like, I decide when we get donuts. Yes, have that big buffet with all of the thoughts, but obviously a solo buffet because buffets right now, super gross and COVID-y. Yes, Joe, get that. Oh, that's a brain slug. I've never seen that. That is amazing. You have a brain slug and a donut. Okay, one more here. I'm scared of not knowing if we'll be together in the future. So what I love about this one, and this one comes up all the time in relationships, is we don't know what's going to happen in the future. Yeah, water towards, I can handle the uncertainty. Yeah, we don't know. But what are the things that, what are the actions? This goes back to what we were talking about earlier. What are the actions we're going to do? And so we can even leave that I'm scared bit. I'm scared about the future. I don't know what'll happen. Will happen in our relationship. I don't, right? I have no idea. It's impossible to know. Again, time travel, very difficult. But we make ourselves miserable trying to time travel into the past or into the future. Right? I'm scared about the future. I don't know what will happen in our relationship. But, exactly. Extermination, right? Just recognizing, I don't know the future. Right? But I'm going to do actions. And it might be we, because ideally, as a couple, you've had a conversation about what you value in the relationship together. So you can say, hey, here are my values, there are your values, and here's a set of our values that we're going to practice in the relationship. Identifying values together, identifying a specific set of values for a relationship, super helpful. We can explore that on some videos later, but let's assume this couple, they've been working on their mental health, and they're like, okay, I'm going to do actions we value today. Because so often we get caught up in this stuff. We're trying to time travel, making ourselves upset, and then we miss the fact that we are in the relationship right now. A meteor could come and hit the planet tomorrow, or 5 years from now, 10 years from now. No clue what'll happen. All sorts of other ways that the world could end as well in that time. But right now I'm in that relationship. So what am I going to do in this moment with my time and energy to build that relationship? Because that's something I can do. Because the brain loves to come up with all sorts of stuff, right? Because that I'm scared of not knowing if we'll be together in the future could be this, just like I'm scared of not knowing if I'll relapse in the future and I'll mess up the relationship. I'm scared if I might have cheated on my partner and I don't remember it, and they'll find out and I don't deserve this and so on, right? It could be any fear, and we accept that. I'm like, yeah, that's a fear. But right now, this is what I'm doing. Okay. Coming up at 9:18. Oh, Jokizo, I saw you just added one in. Let's do it. We got time for one more. Said, I'm unable to stay present because my brain's overactive 24/7. My brain is overactive 24/7. Sounds like you have one of those good superpowered brains. Latest model, supercharged, all the best cognitive superpowers. An amazing appliance. Okay. Anyone want to take a crack at that? I'm unable to stay present because my brain is overactive 24/7. And Joe, I see you got a great one there. Too. You said, I'm afraid of a giant meteor will destroy the Earth before I overcome my mental health challenges. So and you know what? That is really neat. I actually talk about that a lot with people. I always encourage people to be over your mental, be recovered right now. It's only ever right now. There's no mental health challenges to overcome. Because it is just how I interact with thoughts and feelings and physical sensations and voices and alpacas in this moment. And it is only ever going to be something you do in this moment. So yeah, do it now. Be over your mental health challenges right now. That is something we can all do. And in fact, that is all we'll ever get to do. Like even somebody, right? Like even if I talk about, like I kind of have to talk about recovery and like, oh, it's been this many years of recovery and all that kind of stuff because that's still like the way we talk about this stuff. But personally, when I'm looking at my mental health, I'm very much looking at like this moment. And it was so useful to take that pressure off. I have no idea what will happen in the next moment. But in this moment, I'm going to do something I value. Yeah. And then there'll be a moment after that, and I'll get the exact same choice again. And there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. Oh, world peace. I'm glad you found this useful. And water swords. Yes, it is difficult to concentrate. We just practice. We just keep working on it, right? In each of those moments, we just say, okay, how do I want to spend my time and energy? And that exactly is like the way we approach. Like I'm unable to stay present because my brain is overactive 24/7. So I would go because this is kind of relevant. I'm taking part in a meditation retreat, sort of, right now. There's to practice. Let's say practice. Because it also really helps to make presence, like not a thing, like I've got to do it, but just like, hey, I want to try being present in this moment. And maybe we'll even change that there. I want to try to practice being present in this moment. Because I'm doing this meditation retreat online, because my original plan this year was I plan to be in Japan this week. There's a type of meditation retreat that happens basically in this first week of December every year at a lot of Buddhist temples. It can, depending on the temple, it can be a very hardcore retreat, where at least on some of the nights you meditate until quite late, and some temples will do like you'll do one maybe overnight meditation session with no sleeping. So I was like looking forward to this, but instead, so I'm doing it online with the Upaya Zen Center, which is down in New Mexico. And so it's still great. Like it's been a great practice, and still doing like work and seeing people and streaming and stuff like that. But then meditating a lot more during the day. So it's about like four or five sessions. Today was just the first day. But I think tomorrow it's 5 hour long meditation sessions. They're not all totally an hour when you actually get into it. But yeah, that can get difficult, especially because I wasn't meditating 5 hours a day yesterday. And so yeah, today was very much difficult at times. And so what I always bring myself to when you're getting into an intense practice is just bringing it back to one breath. All I have to do is pay attention to one breath. So I'm going to notice as I breathe in, and then I'm going to notice as I breathe out. And that was success. And then, because I was really successful with that breath, I'm going to choose to do it again. And then I'll pay attention to the next breath as I breathe in, and then as I breathe out. And it can be a really fulfilling practice, whether it's sitting and meditating or just going about life. So just bring it back to this moment. All we have to do is choose in this moment, and that is enough. And we don't have to carry around all of this pressure of controlling everything that's happened in the past and everything that could happen in the future. So here, to wrap things up, I see we're coming up on 9:30. Let's just zoom out a bit so that it fits. This is the exercise to start to practice this and to be aware of this. And I mean, it's something you can notice all of the time. In the next message, the next time you send a message online, whether it's an email asking somebody for something, whether you're sharing something about your life on Instagram, text message, whatever, just notice where you position power. Is it that something else is in control and things are just happening to you? Or even if that is the case, right, that something is happening in your environment, in the way you describe your message, are you giving yourself back some agency? Is it about what you are going to do? Is it about what you're going to choose and where you're going to go? And so really just look at, right, it's not about being delusional. It's not about pretending that bad things aren't happening around you. It's just about where that arrow of power is pointed. Are all the arrows pointed at you, and so you have no control? Or is there an arrow of power pointing out from you? And even in that, difficult situation, even in that stormy sea, you want to try to explore, to practice handling it. And in that next moment, those are the choices you're going to make. So try that out, everybody. That brings us to the end of the lab episode on the Locus of Control. Like I said, I can share a bunch of links. Of course, if people are part of the Discord community, I'll throw up the link for that right now, because I can share links to the research there. But then also, if you are watching this later on YouTube, I will post the links there. There is the Discord link. I just threw it in the chat, but on YouTube, I'll throw a bunch of the research links down below so you can check that out. Really, really interesting stuff. Locus of Control really is so, like I was saying, it's become more and more important as not only for taking care of my own mental health, but now sharing those skills with others. So yeah, thank you, awesome community. Go, yes, like you just did there, Sean, go and get that final boss, right? Like, want to be awesome at tackling that final boss. And yeah, Toad Sage, thank you so much for the subscription, and everybody else. All of our other wonderful subscribers and community members, thank you so much. And yep, I look forward. We'll be back. We're going to play, thank you, Louis, donuts to you. We'll play Among Us again on Friday. It looks like 4 p.m. And then we are back here on Sunday in the toolkit tool shop for the tune-up. And so we'll do the Q&A here on Sunday as well. I'll be deep in the meditation retreat at that point. So it'll be a good time. Maybe we can talk a bit about hardcore meditation, because that is always fun. But everybody, thank you so much. Always awesome to chat with you and share about these things and explore these skills, because they are so important and they should be accessible to everybody. So yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have an awesome night, and I will see you soon.